There we go. Hey, everybody. Adam Savage in my cave, and I'm answering some questions about my time as a host of Mythbusters on the Discovery Channel. It's been officially almost exactly 5 years since the last episode aired, and it feels like about 18 months to me. It doesn't feel like a half a decade has passed. It still feels quite fresh. Today's question is a really awesome one. Jordan Freeman says, do you think the controversy called by plane on a conveyor belt will ever end? This is great. First of all, let's talk about what plane on a conveyor belt means. And then let's talk about the controversy. And then I'll address whether or not I think it's ever going to end. The myth of airplane on a conveyor belt, the myth is that if a plane is on a runway trying to take off. My hand is this plane and it's trying to take off. It's moving down the runway to take off. And the runway is itself a conveyor belt under the plane running in reverse, matching its speed. If the plane is trying to take off and the runway is a conveyor belt running the other direction, can the plane take off? That's the question. It's like a physics question, right? If a plane is attempting to take off on a runway while the runway is a conveyor belt running in reverse, can the plane take off? This question generates reams of controversy on the internet. When we first started looking into it, I remember bringing it to Jamie and him going, why would we test that? It's totally stupid. And I'm like, it may be painfully obvious to you, Heinemann, but check out this stack of arguments we found. And we like thousands and thousands of websites devoted to people arguing about this. This is a while back, but yeah, this was a deeply fought over, passionate debate. Can the plane take off? Now, the way I have laid that question out to you, that's the question. And now the controversy, where does the controversy come from? You already have probably formed an answer in your mind as to whether or not you think the plane can take off. And it all hinges on whether or not the plane can actually operate like a plane, i.e., can it move forward? So a lot of people say the plane will never move forward because the conveyor belt's matching its speed. It's stationary, and a stationary plane can't take off. Well, that's true. A stationary plane cannot ever take off. Sorry, unless it's a VTOL, right? Sure, that. But we're talking standard airplane with a propeller can never take off if it can't move forward to create its own headwind. I mean, okay, sorry, small qualifier. I guess if there was a headwind that matched the plane's takeoff speed, yes, the plane could take off. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about a standard plane on a standard runway taking off in its standard fashion. If it can't move forward, no, it can't take off. And lots of people make that argument. It never flies because it can't move forward. And then all these other people say it can totally move forward and fly. And they're arguing with the funny thing about the controversy about this story is it's a disagreement over the basic principles of the question. The reason I'm being slow about this is because I want to kind of give you an idea of how complicated the question actually is. To make it clear why it took us so long to understand why it's complicated. It took us forever, what it felt like. It took about 3 weeks of production before we understood people's confusion with the story enough to actually explicate and speak to that confusion in the episode. And the confusion that we discovered is the question itself has this verbal trickery in it. When I say to you that the plane is attempting to take off, but the runway is a conveyor belt that matches its speed in reverse, you are thinking of the plane before it's taken off like a car. And it's very similar to a car in its large components. There is a body, and you sit in that body. Attached to that body are wheels. This is the same for a car. That body is moving forward on those wheels, and if the road is matching the speed in reverse, well, the car won't move forward. But what about the plane? I mean, the plane's the same as the car. It's got wheels, it's moving along the road. It should also not move forward. Ha ha! But it does, because while the superficial similarities between a car and a plane, i.e., a capsule for a person and wheels to move along the ground, those things are similar. The medium that those two machines move through are totally different. The car's mode of locomotion is its tires' contact with the ground. The way it moves forward is because of the friction of the tire's contact to the ground. And that friction means that each place the tire is touching the ground, there's a little bit of inertia to get past that friction. And as the tire moves, well, now the car takes advantage of that inertia and moves forward. And so that point on the tire changes to the next point and keeps on moving the car, and the car moves forward. The car moves forward because of the tire's relationship to the ground. On an airplane, the car moves forward for an entirely different reason. On an airplane, the car moves forward because the propeller, which is a pair of wings bolted to a spindle, because their propeller is moving wind this way, and thus it's pulling the plane in the opposite direction. The propeller is pushing wind into the plane, and because it's doing that, for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. The plane is moving forward. So both the plane and the car are moving forward because of the first law of thermodynamics, but they're exploiting totally different versions of it. The car is using friction with the ground, and the plane is using friction with the air. All this is to say, the confusion around airplane and conveyor belt is all about that little relationship between a car and a plane and their similarities and their differences. Because the answer is the plane will always take off because it's pushing itself through the air, not along the ground. So no matter how fast the conveyor belt of the runway is moving the opposite direction to the plane will always move forward because it's the air. It's not the ground that the plane is moving through. This myth is so controversial, we actually, in order to do it, we took a tarp that was half a mile long and put a bar at the end of it and dragged that tarp behind a pickup truck at 25 miles per hour, which was the takeoff speed of this ultralight, fully covered canvas plane we hired for the day. And so their takeoff speed was 25 miles an hour. We had a pickup truck pulling the runway in reverse at 25 miles an hour, and that plane took off same exact time it would have every other time. The runway moving in reverse made no difference to it. And the pilot of that plane, he thought it wouldn't take off. That's how pervasive the confusion in the question is. So, when you ask about the controversy, the thing I always want to say is go easy on people who have trouble with the controversy of this story. It's not because they're dumb, and it's not because they don't understand. It's because the question is devilishly clever in its ability to confuse the human mind. Cars and planes seem very similar in this question on a superficial level, and that superficial similarity is what confounds everybody. So I'm here to say that story is going to be complicated for a long time because it's hard to communicate. It just took me, 10 minutes to talk it through. That's the result. I can't even tell you. We argued about that, like Steve-O and I argued about it, Steve-O and Jamie and I, the whole crew went through all these different machinations to come around to understanding where this confusion was. It was not immediately obvious. And we really had to kind of sort of look over all of our proclivities and all of our biases to understand where that confusion was and then speak to it. But it was completely iterative. So, no, I don't think that controversy is going away. Funny story, when that episode was supposed to air, Discovery had it up on their schedule, and for some reason it didn't air that night. Like there was just some East Coast, West Coast feed problem with Discovery's channel listings, and oh crap. Oh good. Sorry, I just thought I noticed something. There was some like snafu with the television listings. And so people thought Airplane on a Conveyor Belt was going to air one night, and it didn't air that night. And people went bananas. This is the reason Jamie got rid of the landline at M5. He still had a landline at the point in which we made this episode. But he came in the next morning, that episode was supposed to have aired, and his answering machine of M5 was filled with people yelling at him for the controversy of somehow not airing this story. It was crazy how involved people got. Later on, when the episode finally aired and we checked in with some of the forums where people were arguing with this, the people who argued against the plane taking off, still said that it would never take off. We just did the episode wrong. Isn't that funny? What they're literally saying is, oh, I watched those two guys conduct an experiment to prove this, and they proved that the plane would take off. And because I disagree with that the plane can take off, I'm just going to ignore their experiment. I can't help people like that. Yeah. No, that's not going away soon. But it's not because people are dumb. Not at all. It's because language is confusing and people can get caught up in that confusion. Yeah. Thank you so much for that awesome question. I love talking about that controversy. It was a fun story, and it was fun to be part of such a fervid, kind of passionate discussion. Tested patrons, keep submitting your wonderful questions, and I will keep answering them, hopefully wonderfully as well. Thank you guys so much. Stay safe, and I will see you next time.